Today we're going to work on the pen tool. What I'd like for you to do is start with a new Photoshop document. We're going to press the keyboard command Ctrl N, or you can go to File and select New. You want to create a document that is 10 inches wide by 10 inches tall. Your resolution should be 72 ppi. Your background color should be white. Press OK. We don't need to worry about naming the document right now. We're going to look in our Tools panel, and if you're at the Move tool and you go down past Dodge, you're going to find the Pen tool. It looks like the bottom of a calligraphy pen. When we click on it, we want to look at the Options bar and make sure that Path is selected. If you don't have Path selected, you're either going to draw a shape or some pixels, but we want to make sure that Path is selected. To begin, when you click your mouse on the screen, you'll notice it makes a dot. That dot is called an anchor point. When you click again, it connects the two anchor points. You'll notice that the first one is a hollow anchor point, and the second one that you're currently on is a solid anchor point. When you draw the line by connecting the two arrows right now, this is what we would call an open path. It's got two anchor points and it could not be filled in. I'm going to continue to click and make anchor points, and I want to fill this in like to create a shape. So if you notice, if I put my pen on top of the anchor point that I just made, I get a little line. That means that I'm using an open path. If I move my cursor, notice I'm not clicking, I'm just moving my cursor down to the original anchor point, the pen has a little circle on it. That tells me, hey, you're fixing to make a closed path or an enclosed path. So I click right there and it connects to the original dot or original anchor. One of the things to note is that right now, if you look in your layers panel and we look at the thumbnail on the background layer, we haven't really created anything. It's still blank. If you accidentally press enter, you notice your path goes away. Okay, there's no need to be alarmed by that, because we can simply get it back by going over to our layers panel, find your path option, click on it, and here's your work path that you just created. When you click on the work path, you're going to see that it shows back up. It's pretty simple to do. Okay, the second path that we're going to create is going to be a triangle. And so we made our path, but I want to add some more anchor points to it. Maybe I want to pull this out and do some stuff to it. I'm going to go to my path or my pen tool options on the toolbar, and I'm going to find add anchor point. So I can click on that, and you'll notice that when I click, it made another little anchor there in the middle. I can click anywhere else and it can continue making more anchor points. If I decide that I don't need an anchor point, maybe I made too many, I don't need a particular one, I'm going to delete the anchor point by going back to the pen option, choose delete, and I can delete the two path or anchor points that you just created. Sometimes as you're using a certain tool, you might accidentally click off of the path. That's okay. What you want to do is, if you accidentally deselect the path, we're going to come over on your keyboard, hold down the Control key, and click on the path that you want to select, and it will select that particular path. So you can have more than one path in your work area or your paths panel, but like I said, if you accidentally press enter, they go away. We can click on the paths, they come back. If you need to select one particular one, you hold down the Control key and select that path. When you create a path, let's create one together. I'm going to click on my pen tool again. This time I'm going to create a square, or close to a square. I'm going to enclose it, so I click back to the top. Now I notice that if I come over here and delete an anchor point, let's delete, I'm going to Control click that path. I'm going to delete this anchor point. Notice how Photoshop got rid of that line and it made the path go from the top corner to the lower corner. So now you have a triangle. One of the things that sometimes makes adding and deleting points or anchor points a pain is having to go back and forth and toggle over here and choose which tool you need. So one of the things that I find is very, very helpful, when I'm on the pen tool, if I look up here, I'm going to select auto add, and delete. And what that does, I'm going to control click on one of my paths so you can see. What that does is when I put my pen over a line segment, it doesn't have to be straight, it can be curved, but when I put my pen over a line segment, it gives me a plus symbol. So when I click on that, now I have a new anchor point. When I hover it over a existing anchor point, let's hover it over the one I just created, and now I get a minus sign, meaning that if I click on it again, it will get rid of those anchor points. It's a pretty cool feature. It saves you some time. Okay, we're going to create another shape or another path, but I don't want it to be connected or closed like these. So what I want to do is quickly be able to select everything at one time or deselect everything at one time. I'm going to click outside of the path that I just created, and when I press escape, my screen will clear. Notice that the path is still over here in your work path, it's just not visible on the screen. Okay, let's try to do that. The first thing that we are going to do is click the shape. Possibly I'm making a box letter S. Well, if I click right now, what's going to happen is the anchor point here will connect to this other anchor point, but I don't want to get rid of the path. I still want to be able to see it. I just don't want it to be active right now. So I press the escape key once, and the path is still there. If I were to press it again, the path would completely disappear. But now I can go in, just make some weird shape. Now I can go in, I can make multiple shapes where they don't connect, but I still have several paths there. You'll notice that notice I'm starting a new path, there's a little star kind of icon down below the pen cursor. That indicates that that will be a new path. Let's just draw something. And then again, whenever I hover over it again, I get the circle indicating that it's going to be a closed path. We want to draw a new shape now. And the easiest way to get rid of a bunch of paths at one time, I'm going to hold down my control key and draw a box around the paths. You'll notice all of them are selected. Now press the delete key on your keyboard. You'll notice that the path isn't even showing up in the paths panel, so you've completely gotten rid of it. We want to practice how we can draw perfect squares and perfect angles. I'm going to press my mouse to start off my path. I notice it gives me a star on the cursor. Now I'm going to go over to the side a little bit, and I want to, actually I'm making a conscious effort to put my cursor a little bit higher than what that square should be or what that corner should be. But I'm going to hold shift while I'm clicking, and you'll notice that when you do that, it's not going to allow me to click off the angle. I'm going to press shift again. And while I'm holding down my shift key, now you'll notice that I have a box or a square that has perfectly 90-degree angles at each corner. After we've drawn our box, we want to maybe possibly make this box a different shape. I'm going to press my control key and I click to get my square, my path active again. Now, still holding down control, if I click here in the center, I can skew the box or make it kind of a weird shape. Do whatever I want to with this square. But if I want to make sure that it stays a square but we just go down a little bit longer possibly, I'm going to hold down shift while I'm holding control, and I can shift it down and make it a long box. It's important to note that you're going to hold down shift and control before you release your mouse. So you have to release the mouse first, and then you can let go of control and shift. That's a big mistake that beginning graphic artists make sometimes. Another cool trick that you can do, let's say that I want to move this anchor point, and this anchor point. I want my top left anchor point to stay still. What I'm going to do is I'm going to control click on each of the 3 anchor points that I want to work with. I'm going to hold down shift when I do that. So it's shift and control. Now when I click on this line here and I start moving it around, it makes that top corner anchor point solid or stationary and pivots everything else around that. So you can make some pretty cool shapes. Now if I get it back to my 90-degree square and I like what I've done, release the mouse and then let go of your shift and your command key. It's a pretty cool trick. Right now you've got 3 anchor points that are selected to be able to move. So I want to deselect them, so I'm holding down Control and Shift. I click back on the anchor points. You're going to notice that as you click on them, they become hollow again, meaning that that anchor point is not selected. A cool thing that if you need to move one anchor point, maybe you drew something and you just need to move one of the corners a little bit. If you hold down your Control key, and notice I didn't hold down Shift, I'm holding down Control, I can select one anchor point and alter it so that maybe I'm making a new shape or whatever. So if I Control click on one anchor point, it makes that one anchor point active. If I Shift and Control, I can get 2 anchor points active. Then I can do some weird stuff, adding a new anchor point. Remember that if I click on that anchor point again, it gets rid of it. Practice manipulating your blocks for a second. Once we've played around with the square and you have held down your Control key and moved your angles around, doesn't matter what you did, we are going to get a new work path. So what we want to do is I pressed enter and I still see my work path over here, so I'm just going to drag it down to the trash. So we're going to start with something new. Now we're going to start talking about Bezier curves and creating domes and kind of weird shapes and circles. Remember to make sure that your auto add delete is selected for your anchor points and that you don't have anything in your paths panel over here. Now we're going to make our dome. I'm going to come down to the lower left edge of my screen and I'm going to click. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to click and drag the mouse and keep it clicked while we're dragging it. You notice that I get this little handlebar that shows up. This is called a Bezier curve handlebar. A lot of times we just call it handlebars. I can control how far or how much I want it to bend by how far I pull these handles, and change the angle of the bend by moving them around this way. This creates a Bezier curve. Now, if I want to make sure that my dome is perfectly symmetric, again, just like you do with everything in Photoshop, press the Shift key and it will straighten out those lines. Now, it's important if you get that line straight to release the mouse first and then Shift, because if you don't, it's going to bend the line back the way that you had it before clicking on Shift. The next thing that we want to do is come down to the other side to finish out our dome. I'm going to come over here. I know that it's not perfectly even, but I'm going to press my mouse key or click my mouse key, and then I come over here, and to finish it out or close it out, I press on the original anchor. Now notice that this isn't exactly right as far as being even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to click on my path again so I can see my anchor points. Remember that you can hold down your Control key to select one anchor point and you can make adjustments as needed. Now my dome looks a little bit better. So go ahead, make your dome look right. If I were to come up and click on this handle here, it would start adjusting the angles of the dome, but we don't want to do that just yet. Another cool thing you can do, I'm going to hold down my Control key. I'm going to click on the anchor point at the top. I want to make my dome a little bit shorter, so I'm going to press it down. Now while I'm still holding down, you'll notice that when you hold down Control, you get a white arrow. And so that means that we're going to be able to move stuff. If I want to alter my angles, I can do so by pulling the handles. So you can make yours look kind of like that. One of the things that you're going to notice is when we press and hold Control, we get the white arrow here, but when we come out to the sides on the handles, it turns into a black cursor, a black arrow. This means that you get kind of this, they call it a seesaw effect, where it's affecting both sides of the dome. But if I only want to move this side, I'm going to let go of Control for a second. I'm going to come over here and I can press the Convert Point tool. Now if I click on Convert Point and I click on this handle, it allows me to only move one side from that anchor point. Okay, we're going to go back and kind of mess with some stuff. I want to add in a new anchor point, so I'm going to go back to my pen tool. Because I have the auto add and delete, I can come over here and click on my path. And you notice because this was a curved line, when I added the anchor point, I got these Bezier handles, but I only want to maybe work with the bottom Bezier handle. So I can go over and click on my convert point tool, or I can hold down the Alt key. When I hold down Alt, you notice that I get this little caret or the little angle for my cursor when I hover it over that line. So now when I move that handle, I can break just that part of the curve up, so that's the only part that moves. Now it's important to release the mouse first and then let go of Alt. Okay, you've already kind of figured out Bezier curves, so we want to hold down our Control key. I'm going to select all of my angles and press delete so I can get rid of the workspace. We're going to practice and alternate between straight lines and curved lines using the pen tool. Start on the left side of your screen, hold down your shift key, remember that's going to make the line straight. Then you're going to come up, release the shift key after you release the mouse. We're going to come up here, and I'm going to hold down shift so it gets a straight angle. Release shift. Come down here. It's okay that my angle's a little bit off. I could adjust that later. I'm still holding down shift. I'm going to make a straight line. I'm going to release shift. Come up here. Now as I start to drag it, I hold down shift to get the straight line. I'm going to come out to the side. Then I'm going to hold shift again, straight line. And this time we're going to go below. So I'm going to click and drag. Click back on my line. And then shift. Practice that shape a few times until you get comfortable alternating between curves and straight lines. Now we're going to go down here to this line and start working on a path. To work on a path down here, I have to first get rid or deselect the path that I'm on, so I'm going to press escape, and now when I come down here I can start a new path. It's pretty easy, but it's a common mistake that sometimes we forget. Next we're going to make a path with just curved lines, so I want to, after my first click here, I'm going to come up here, click and drag. Then I'm going to come down to my baseline. Then I'm going to come down about the same space or size and drag. If I want to make my handles perfectly straight, remember to hold down your shift key. Then we're going to click. I come up to the top again and drag down here. The lines that are, or the anchor points that are on the middle line, the baseline, those are just single clicks. There's no drags. Then when you drag it, it goes where you want that angle to be. Now, so I click here, and let's say I'm in a hurry, and I realize that I made the wrong kind of anchor point. I made a straight line, and I need it to be a curve. I forgot to drag a handle. It's not a problem. You're going to hold down your Alt key, and that turns your cursor into a caret. Remember that converts the point. So now when I click on it and drag, it gets handles and it becomes a curved line. If I want to make that curve perfectly straight, I'm going to hold down shift while I'm holding down my Alt key, and it makes a straight line. Now I'm going to let go of my mouse, and now I can release the two keys on the keyboard.